We need to have a citywide plan and a neighborhood-specific plan. The root of most crime is drugs and guns. I've touched on it in my opening of the need for treatment on demand, and we'll seek council support in January. Hopefully that will be unanimous to make sure that we have treatment on demand in Boston. But you're also talking about the fact that folks are not working. And so we need to have a jobs growth. This is no longer a summer problem. And you all remember, for the longest time, the administration treated it like it was a summer problem. It's a year-round problem. So we need to provide hope and opportunity, economic opportunity, for not only the youth of Boston, but also for adults. Led the effort on the council to finally put some teeth behind the Boston residency job policy. The fact of the matter is, you drive through construction sites and you see more license plates from Vermont, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island, and those should be jobs that are going to the people of Boston. When you talk about why people turn to crime, I'd argue that I have probably the most experience as a former prosecutor, serving in Roxbury District Court, area B2, B3, D4, E13. Those were all the areas that I worked. And you see the recidivism. It's the same people coming through pretty regularly. A lot of it's around substance abuse, a lot of it's around the fact that they don't have a job, and a lot of the crime that's happening is from a sort of a small, select group of individuals.
It's not just prevention, but law enforcement in the aftermath, but we cannot abandon those who are doing these acts. And like I said, it's a population of 300 to 500, and I think we give up on our kids, and we can't do that.
Another part of this thing that you can't address by throwing money at it is the lack of, I guess, self-respect. And there's a lot of single parent, and as Ayanna pointed out, grandparents raising kids. And kids don't have a sense of self-worth right now, I don't believe. A lot of kids don't. A lot of kids seem, like life is hopeless. And you got to give them a sense of self-worth. And that sense of self-worth, I think, will promote a sense of respect among others, and a respect for life, frankly, which is not there on some of the streets of the city of Boston. There's this age, this video game age, where kids are, on the video game, and they're like going through this computer animated thing where they're getting killed and killing time and time again, and then they come back to life, and it isn't that way.
For me, it's about doing it yourself, right? And so when I look at other adults and I say, what are you doing for young people in the community? If they shoot that answer back at me, I go, you can find me at Jefferson Playground, you can find me at Murphy Field, you can find me at the Moakley Athletic Facility. I'm coaching teenagers baseball, and it's year-round, because during the winter I have them inside Curtis Hall or the Agassiz, hitting ground balls at them in the gym, just so that they can be with me and not on the street. I have some success stories. I have Luis Reyes, who grew up on Dixwell Street in Elkson Square. No one in his family's ever been to college. He frankly didn't even know what a master's degree was until I spoke to him and explained to him that I was studying to get my master's degree. He is now a student at Suffolk University on a full scholarship. I helped him apply for not only the scholarship, but for his college applications, and I went to more than one parent-teacher meeting, because it is true. Our family models are very different now, and he was being raised by a single mother with 5 kids. But I have some sad stories. I've lost a few of my children, and I've had to bury them. They include Sergio Ibanez, who was hanging outside of his grandmother's house on November 25th of 2008, and he was murdered. He was a senior in high school at Charlestown High. He had already been accepted to UMass Amherst and had a full scholarship to go, and was going to be the first in his family to go. There was not wrong place, wrong time. If you can't hang out at your grandmother's house, then you can't hang out at it.
Worse than having a lack of law in a particular area, like they have down in Occupy Boston now, is having an area where the laws are counterproductive, or where the people don't respect the laws. Because if they don't respect the laws, they're not going to trust the people who are charged with enforcing the laws. So I agree with Mike. The violence problems is intimately is connected to the problem with drugs, and it's even more connected to the way our government is trying to deal with the social problem. So what I'm trying to point out is we have to go to the root, and I would prefer to spend more time trying to treat addiction rather than throwing people in jail for anything that has to do with drugs. Now, I'm just going to use a hypothetical example here. Say that we outlawed alcohol. Well, what might happen? Might we have violence on our borders and in our inner cities? Might we have an explosion of organized crime? We have to actually learn the lessons of the past. And I'm not claiming to be some luminary on this issue. I just happen to watch PBS, as I'm sure many of you do. So we have to treat addiction, we have to treat drugs, we have to treat the entire social problem as one to be solved by helping people. helping them as opposed to hurting them.
And Sean, I would say the root of the problem is not drugs, because you have to recognize that people are addicted to drugs because of trauma. They're self-medicating. And that's why I serve on boards, to make sure that these programs are not just treating the addiction, but are treating the trauma. We need a holistic response. You can't talk about those that are incarcerated without talking about addiction and recovery. You can't talk about addiction and recovery without talking about mental health. And you can't talk about mental health without talking about trauma, which is why myself and Counselor Connolly continue to push the envelope to advocate for full support services at our Boston Public Schools, that we are committed to supporting these students in their social-emotional wellness, because hurt people hurt people. And that intervention has to start as early as possible, which is why we need social workers and therapists and guidance counselors.
But how are we going to pay for it?
Well, look at pilot reform. Our colleges and universities produce some of the best social workers in the country. We've had creative partnerships with our community health centers, and there are opportunities to continue to do those creative partnerships to support our young people in their social-emotional wellness. And by the way, people think it's just one population of kids who stand to benefit from that type of intervention, and I reject that. Every child can benefit from that. Every child. We talk a lot about the adults who are hurting in this economy, and the kids are too. Trauma is not only defined by violence.
When you want to talk about how to pay for it, you also look at the $1 billion budget for the Boston Public Schools, and the fact that we don't leverage those dollars appropriately at all. And we can point to small pieces, as I did earlier, tens of thousands of dollars spent a month to store expired food. You can look at a $900,000 recycling contract, $900,000 waste contract with no recycling contract in the Boston Public Schools. If you have a recycling contract, you're going to lower your waste dollars, and if you structure it appropriately, you might even return revenue to the system. If you run the food services department correctly, it's based on participation. We've got over 80% of the kids eligible, and yet most don't use the meals because they were so bad. We could actually return money to the Boston Public Schools if we ran that department correctly. So you want to leverage the dollars appropriately, and then you want to do what Councilor Presley and I have been talking about for over a year, put full support services in every Boston Public School. You're not just doing great education policy then, you're doing great public health and public safety policy. It all links together. Safe and healthy neighborhoods come together when you put things together like that. And yes, also take a look at the $83 million transportation budget as well, and whether you want to talk about student assignment reform or not, right now we're spending $83 million and we can't get kids to school on time as it is. I mean, that needs to be overhauled as well.